to Board Gems. This is my regular video series with new videos on the 3rd, 13th, and 23rd of every month in which I cover an older board game gem. And this video is about a game that originally came out in 2011, published by Days of Wonder. It was a Days of Wonder big box game and designed by Serge Laget, and that's Cargo Noir. It's for 2 to 5 players, probably the middle range. Is best. 3 or probably 4 I would say is best, actually. I play 3-player all the time and it works well. It is an auction game, and usually auction games don't work very well at the lower player counts, but this one does, and surprisingly well even with just 2 players. The box says 8 and up, kind of borderline. It's definitely more involved than something like a Ticket to Ride, which I think of as an 8 and up, but it is kind of borderline between 8 and up and 10 and up. Let's split the difference and say 9 and up. It says 30 minutes to 90 minutes, which is a huge time range. If you're playing 2 players, you can definitely bang out a game if you're familiar with it in half an hour. But if you're playing with a full complement, you'll want to give quite a bit of time for it, because there's a fixed number of rounds. And even though that fixed number is slightly different at lower player counts versus higher player counts, in general, a 4-player game is going to be almost twice as long as a 2-player game. Serge Laget is a French designer, and like many French designers, he's very collaborative. Many of his most famous designs have been working with another designer. This one is a solo design. He doesn't have a lot of famous solo designs. Maybe his most famous is a game called Mare Nostrum. However, there is a new game that came out just a year or so ago about dwarves or something. I forget the name. Nita Valier, something like that. It's a made-up fantasy name, whatever. This one is interesting because being a Days of Wonder game, a Days of Wonder big box game, big square box game, it gets some attention when it comes out. Every new release from Days of Wonder in a big box, maybe not so much lately. Like, I think the most recent release they did was a game called Deep Blue, and before that, The River, which I don't think set the world on fire, but at least back in the late 2000s, every Days of Wonder game that came out, every big box game, was an event. You had to check it out and form an opinion on it. And this one in particular, I felt, was met with a collective meh by the hobby. Which is a shame, because my family and I happen to enjoy this quite a bit. It was even given away for free at one point by Days of Wonder. If you spent X amount of dollars, like $50 US or 50 euros or something, on the Days of Wonder web store for a time, you could actually get this for free. So they kind of gave up on this, which is a shame because it's a board gem. That's why it's here on this channel. Let me show you how it plays, then I'll tell you more about why it's a board gem. To set up the game, set up the board components in a pattern like so. Each board component is double-sided and may show a number of players that side of the board is for. So for example, this board shows 2, 3, and 4. This one shows 5. So based on the number of players, you're going to have a certain side face up. This one side will have a space or more spaces for tokens, contraband tokens, or blank, which means just a place not appearing in this game. We're going to set this up for a 4-player game. In a 5-player game, all the boards are available, but as you have fewer and fewer players, the board shrinks and shrinks. So for example, in a 4-player game, you're not going to be using this board or this board. If you think it'll save space, you could even just leave them to the side. And you always have Macau in the center here. And in the center, you're going to add these coins to the casino. That's the lower part of Macau here. You'll have a round marker, which will start on the space 0, I suppose. And to the side of the board, you're going to set up the scoring cards. This is what wins you the game. Your goal is to get these cards. And the cost is on the top left, the red number, and how many victory points it's worth is the blue number on the top right. The standard scoring cards are 1 for 1. So you'll see the Villa costs 15 and is worth 15 victory points. But the very valuable ones have a better ratio. They're worth more points based on the money you spend. And these ones are actually worth fewer victory points than their cost, but they also give you a special ability. I'll explain those later. Each player gets a player mat, which I'll put over here. It gives you 6 spaces for contraband tokens and a little summary on the bottom. And each player is going to start with 7 coins. In this bag are contraband tokens. There's, I believe, 9 different types. You can see some of the different types here. And to this bag, you're going to add a number of wild tokens. The rules suggest 1 per player, so in a 4-player game, you would add 4 of these to the bag. Mix them up, and put 1 on every space with a question mark here. Each player also starts with 3 ships. There's 5 of each color, but 2 are unavailable to the player at the start of the game. Put the rest of the tokens to the side for now, then you're ready to begin. The game takes place over a number of rounds. In a 4 or 5 player game, that'll be 10 rounds. In 1 round, each player gets 1 turn. So at the very start of the game, the start player, whoever you determine the start player, will have this kind of ocean liner piece. And the very first thing they will do is move the marker to round 1, and then everybody, starting with the start player, will get 1 turn. Then the start player will move it to round 2, and so on. The start player never changes over the course of the game. You're going to play 10 rounds in a 4 or 5 player game, 11 rounds in a 2 or 3 player game. And that's exactly how many turns each player will have. At the end of the game, at the end of round 10 or 11, players will total up the values on all the cards that they've been able to purchase over the course of the game. Total up the blue numbers, and the player with the most points wins. The flow of the game is probably a little strange compared to other games. On a player's turn, if they have any ships that are out on the board, they're going to resolve them, usually in some way getting these contraband tokens or perhaps more coins. Afterwards, players may have a number of tokens on their player mat, which they then may turn in to claim these cards, and then they send their ships out again. In that very first turn, round 1, of course there are no ships on the board, so all the start player does is take their 3 ships and places them on the board somewhere. If you place a ship in Macau, you have to choose whether to place it on the top portion of the board or the bottom portion, and you can send as many of your ships to Macau on either side as you want. But if you want to send your ships to a port, you have to bid a number of your coins. If you want this lot of contraband, for example, you're going to take a number of coins that you have, place it on the port, and then place one of your ships on the stack of coins to show that is your bid. You don't get these right away. After 1 round, after every other player has had a turn, if your stack of coins is the tallest here, then you can withdraw this ship, pay the coins, just pay them back to the casino here, to Macau, and you get to claim the contraband. Placing a ship here simply allows you, on your next turn, to claim 2 coins. And every ship that you have here, you have a choice you can make with it. You can either draw a blind token from the bag for free and place it on your player mat, or you may exchange 1 token on your mat with one of the tokens here. Now, what do you do with the tokens when you claim them? Well, at the bottom of the mat, it will show some numbers. There's 2 rows. The numbers indicate the value of various sets of this size for the purpose of buying these cards, paying this cost in red in the top left. If it's your turn and you're putting ships on the board, and there's already a stack of coins belonging to another player, you can only send your ship to that port if you provide a bigger stack. So in this case, at least 3 coins. In that sense, you're outbidding the player who currently has the highest stack. You can't choose to have an equal or lower stack. Either you put a higher stack of coins there, or you simply don't bid at that port, and instead you go somewhere else and spend your coins. I'm going to put out the other player's ships so you can see how it works. And now we will say that is one full round. Now the start player, which we'll say is green, moves the marker to round 2. The flow of a player's turn is they pull out all of their ships, return them to their supply, to their player mat, resolving each one as it comes up. Then, optionally, trading in sets of these tokens for scoring cards, and then finally sending the ships out again. If it's your turn and your ship is on top of the tallest stack of coins, so yours is still the highest bid at the start of your next turn, then you pay the coins, get your ship back, and you get to claim these tokens. And immediately we refill. However, if you are outbid, like yellow is here, yellow has 2 coins, but blue has 3 coins. So let's say yellow's turn comes around again. Yellow is outbid. Yellow has a choice to make with this ship. Yellow can either add more coins to the stack, at least 2, so that they have the highest stack again. They still don't get anything yet. This back and forth means nobody is getting these tokens. The player can either increase their stack, their bid, or they can withdraw. And if they withdraw, they get their coins back, they get their ship back, but of course they don't get any contraband tokens. For every ship that is here, you have a choice to make. You can either draw a blind token for free from the bag, or you can exchange a token you already have with a token here in the black market. And for every ship here, you get 2 more coins. Now green has withdrawn all their ships, so the first part of their turn is complete. They've resolved all their ships and brought them back. Now they have this contraband. They can decide what they want to do with it. At the start of the game, a player can hold up to 6 contraband from turn to turn. You can actually collect more contraband in that first part of your turn, as long as you exchange it that turn. But if you have more tokens than you have here, space for, then at the end of your turn, you're going to have to discard tokens that you can no longer fit. You can keep tokens up to as many as you have space for, or you can turn them in. When you turn them in, you discard the tokens from the game for now. They go into a discard pile, and if the bag runs out, you can refill the bag with those tokens. And you total up the value of the sets. 1 token is always worth 1. But if you have multiple, it depends what type of set it is. So if, for example, you have 3 different tokens, like these 3 here, you could turn those in for 6, a value of 6. The tokens go away, and you just remember, okay, I have 6 right now. And 1 extra would be 7. You can turn in as many tokens as you want in any combination you want. If you turn in sets that are identical, the return rate's a little bit better. You see 3 tokens of the same value is worth 9. So for example, if you had 6 tokens here, 3 of one kind and 3 different ones, you could turn in 3 of the same for 9, 3 different ones for 6. That's a total of 15. The tokens would go away, and now you have 15 with which to buy cards here. These up here only give you points, so if you buy a villa, you will have 15 victory points at the end of the game. The card doesn't do anything else other than score you points. But these ones down here give you a little extra benefit. There's 3 different types, and each player can have up to 2 of the same type. The warehouse is worth 5 points at the end of the game, only costs 10, and it gives you more space on your player mat to store tokens. That's very important because later in the game, if you can turn in a much bigger set, it's worth much more in value in terms of getting these cards. So it may be worthwhile to increase the number of tokens you're able to store from turn to turn so you can build a bigger set. You can have up to 2 of these. The syndicate gives you money whenever you are outbid. If you are outbid at a port when it's your turn, you can choose, like usual, to increase the size of your bid or withdraw. If you choose to withdraw, you get your bid back plus 2 coins. That's in fact the only other way of getting coins in the game other than sending your ships here to the casino. You can have up to 2 of these, which allows you to do it with 2 different ships on your turn that are outbid. The cargo ship simply gives you an extra ship. You start with 3, you can have up to 2 additional. And with each of these ships, of course, you can get more coins, you can collect more tokens, have more bids, have your fingers in more pies over the course of the game. And they're still worth victory points, just fewer than you would if you were getting a dedicated scoring card. So after you decide what you want to do with your tokens, and potentially exchanging them for scoring cards, then you're familiar with this, you're going to send all your ships back out to the ports. Again, placing ships in Macau is free. And if you want to bid in a port, you have to put a stack of coins under there. And if somebody's already there, you have to have a larger bid than any player that's already there. And that's your turn. So you will have 10 or 11 turns over the course of the game. The last round is a little bit funny because it plays exactly the same. And that means that anything you bid on in that last round, you will never be able to claim. Because you bid in one round and you collect the next, and there's no next round. You can still bid for things, but really the only reason to do so is to deny a player later in turn order from collecting those tokens. In that last round, and only in that last round, you are also allowed to spend coins to help you get these cards. So in that final round, when you're exchanging your tokens, you can just turn everything in, all your tokens, and add 1 for every coin you have left over, and with that, just buy as much as you can here. And at the end of the game, at the end of that 10th or 11th round, when everybody's had their turn that round, players will total up the values, the blue values, the point values of all the cards they have. And the player with the most points wins. That's it. You're ready to play Cargo Noir. This is a game you first read the rules and you feel like there's something missing here. It seems really simple when they explain it in the rule book, but I don't feel like I have all the information that I need to really understand how it works. And the reason for that is because it's a very unique auction. It's sort of, maybe I'm not using the right word, but it's kind of like a rolling auction. It is a very slow motion auction. Because on your turn, you're bidding on things, and you don't necessarily collect until your turn after. And there's only a set number of rounds, so what you're winning is really important. Every auction is very important. Not every auction involves every player, and by the time your turn comes around again, if nobody was interested, great, you pick it up, right? But what if somebody else is interested? They outbid you. Then on your next turn, you have to decide whether to drop out or outbid them. But you can see, going back and forth like that, you only have a set number of rounds. You're wasting time. You're wasting time. You and the other player is wasting one of your ships for this bid back and forth. And in the meantime, you're not getting tokens. And you have to keep getting tokens. In fact, the easiest way to get tokens is just go to the black market with a ship. You don't have to pay anything. You just get a free token, a random one from the bag. If I had one complaint about the game, it's that one little thing, because it just feels really, really good, such that one player can just put all their boats in the black market every single turn and still be competitive. It doesn't feel like that should be the case. But in general, the rules are so simple and so streamlined, and they're almost so streamlined that for a hobbyist who's used to a little complexity, it can be hard to kind of see the big picture, like how this plays out. Like usually when I read a rule book, I can picture in my head how a game would flow. And with this game, I couldn't. Not after that first reading. I was like, I'm missing something. There's something more here that I'm just not getting. The rule book feels like it's missing something. And it kind of is. It's missing details. Unnecessary details, because the game is simple. So it just says, oh, do this on your turn. You have to realize it's an auction, right? There's like player interaction that's the rule book doesn't really elaborate on. It doesn't need to elaborate on. The game really is as simple as the rule book says, but you're coming in as a hobbyist, you're used to learning and playing all sorts of different games. This is going to be like, what is this? It doesn't feel like it should work, and it feels like part of a game, almost. But it does work. But in terms of that part of a game aspect, because this game did not sell very well at all, there's an interesting kind of balance sometimes that a publisher has to do, and a designer, if they want a game to be successful. Because, now, this is pure speculation. I have no information whatsoever about the design history of Cargo Noir. I will say, to me, it feels like it was a bigger game, that there was more stuff going on. And then the publisher and designer worked together to make it simpler, streamlined it a little bit more, maybe remove some of those rough edges. You know what? That can work really well. If you make that base game streamlined and just really simple and really fun, then you add all that extra stuff in the expansion, right? And people, it's a popular game, you make an expansion for it, and then it has all the stuff, and now it's a bigger game, but not everybody needs all that extra stuff. The problem is, if you take out too much stuff, leave it out for the expansion, what's left has to be really, really engaging and really fun for it to be a hit to justify an expansion. This is the simplest big box game Days of Wonder published since Ticket to Ride, and I can't help but feel like they were going for a similar thing, right? A game that was just so simple and engaging at its core that it'll probably become this huge hit. And then, of course, you can have spin-offs and expansions, whatever, right? And it never reached that level. And I can understand why, because I will say the first game can be quite punishing. Most auction games, they keep going around. So it's very common at the beginning, you lowball something, you hope you get it for cheap. Maybe you do get it for cheap. And if not, somebody outbids you, then you do a back and forth until somebody gets it, right? There's nothing lost with the outbidding process. Two players going back and forth outbidding each other usually doesn't result in a negative for either of them. But in this game, the negative is time. You only have a limited number of rounds. If you play it like in any other auction game, you probably lowball something, right? I want that, I'm just going to put 1 coin on it. Maybe next turn I'll get it for cheap, I'll be lucky. Somebody outbids you, you have to decide whether to outbid them or withdraw and get nothing. Spend nothing, but get nothing. You did spend something, you spent time. And there's that cost sunk fallacy where it's like, no, I really want that thing, so I'm going to outbid that person again. And if you end up outbidding each other a lot, you're wasting time. You're wasting the use of that one ship you used to make the bid. When somebody outbids you, you just feel so much agony because you just wasted that turn with that one ship. And now you have the agony of deciding whether you want to outbid them, at which point, they don't want to have wasted their ship. Maybe they'll outbid you next time, at which point your outbid was wasting more time, right? But what it does is it puts an incredible amount of importance on the initial bid. Putting down a ship, maybe overpaying a little bit, just to discourage anybody else from wanting to compete with you. But yeah, as an auction game, in general, that's something that you need to know that going in. And often that first game, not that it's complicated, but it just kind of breaks so many conventions in a typical auction game that even for experienced hobbyists, they play this game one time and it's just weird. It doesn't feel like it works super well. especially if they're being, outbidding each other and everything, and in the end they're getting very little. It does definitely benefit from repeat plays, especially with the experienced players, right? So, you have a mix of new and experienced players. The experienced players are going to have an advantage because they know how important the initial bid is, as opposed to somebody new coming in trying to lowball, and they're going to go away disappointed. There's a little bit of a danger of players kind of getting stuck in a rut a little bit, and it has to do with how the auction works. So you have a limited number of spaces, right, that have tokens on them, and they have between 1 and 3 or 4 tokens depending on the space, and different ones are available at different player counts. So say you're playing with 3 players, you close off a bunch of them, right? Now you bid on something, you don't get it until the next round. So this is what sometimes happens. Players will bid on something, maybe 1 space here, 1 space there, maybe 2 spaces, put 1 in Macau in the middle. Another player decides they don't want to outbid. Remember, the initial bid is important, so you put that bid down. Maybe you want to put a little bit extra just to make sure nobody competes with you. So what do other players do? They go elsewhere, right? They go to different locations to get different tokens. They do the same thing. It comes back around to you. You take your ships off, you get your tokens, right? You pay your coins, and then you have your ships again, and then what do? Well, some of those spaces are occupied by other players, and the only spaces that are not occupied are the ones you just came off of. And they'll have new tokens, but it's easy to get into this rut of just going into the same spaces every turn, because that's what's available to you. When players outbid each other, that's more fun, and it does get players out of that rut, but it's generally not good for players to keep outbidding each other. It's better for players to bid what they think it's worth and maybe a little bit more to discourage others. But if everybody does that, then everybody just kind of gets into their own kind of pattern. Look, I'm not defending the game. In my opinion, pretty much every game should be fun the first time you play. Otherwise, why would you play it a second time? And I can totally understand why somebody who plays this game just once would not have a great experience with it. I can say that in my case, playing it multiple times was a big, big benefit. It allows you to realize just how much something is worth to you versus other people, and you have to make that decision with your initial bid. You can't wing it. You have to give some thought to that initial bid, and maybe even bid a little higher than you think it's worth, just to discourage somebody from coming in and being a jerk. You can be a jerk in this game, especially in that last round. So this last round is a little bit wonky, because the last round plays out exactly the same as every other round. There is a start player that never changes. So everybody has the same number of turns, and everybody's going in the same order. Well, that last round, you can still spend coins to bid on things, but because there's no next round, you will never get those things. So why would you even bid on those? It's just to keep somebody else from getting them, right? So if you see somebody needs something and you don't need the coins, you can spend the coins in the last round to help you get victory point cards, but they're worth very little individually. It's better from a gameplay point of view to spend your coins to just make something really, really, like you can outbid another player on something that they wanted that they would have gotten in that last round. So you just outbid them, and the player later in turn order, they're cursing because there's no way they can get it, right? Even if they outbid you, they wouldn't get it until the next round, or there is no next round. So sometimes, like, you can be a jerk like that, and the players later in turn order could be a little bit frustrated by that. I haven't found it's like this massive start player advantage or anything, but, it's something to be aware of. I like to warn people going into that last round that sort of thing is possible, and depending on your personality, encouraged. In general, the whole thematic setting, they could have done a whole lot more with it. In the end, it's just a light glazing of a setting. You would expect a game about rum running and stuff like that to be have a bit more intrigue, a bit more excitement. I think that's another reason why the hobby didn't really take too well to the game, because the box cover and art and setting felt like it probably promised more than it actually delivered. There aren't really much, if any, thematic kind of elements to it, right? Because you can go to Macau, you can go to the casino and gamble, but what does that do? It gives you 2 coins. There's no gambling, right? You just that's just the way to get more coins, is going to the casino. But you at no point do you feel like, in danger that the Coast Guard's going to get, catch you or something. None of that stuff is in there. Maybe it would have appeared in an expansion. I don't know. Don't get this game for the theme and setting. But if the rest of the gameplay sounds interesting, check it out. It's still a fun theme, works as well as any other, but you might be expecting more out of the game than it provides. This game came out 2011, and at that time, I look at these gold coins and I'm like, what do these even mean? Like, why are we bidding or spending gold coins? Is this money we're spending? Like, I don't get it. It kind of implies there's like this underground currency. And it's interesting because this game came out in 2011, but a couple years later, there was a film called John Wick. And in John Wick, gold coins were a form of underground currency. And so it's very easy nowadays, if you're introducing this game to players, tied into John Wick somehow. Just say these are the coins that you're using, when you're doing your illegal activities. And in general, the material, the presentation is marvelous. The art is rather fun. As of course, it's Days of Wonder, so the components are going to be great. You got these little, rubbery boats. I have a complaint about the insert, though. Oh my goodness. So, I want to tell you my general feel about inserts. In general, my favorite type of insert is just a cardboard one, right? Put in a simple cardboard insert, throw in a bunch of plastic baggies, I'm happy. I do appreciate a really nicely designed plastic insert. So much so that I have a hard time throwing it away. I want to use it. It's a great insert. And Days of Wonder did this twice. Okay? They make very, very nice inserts. And they made one mistake twice. First with Colosseum and then with this. The insert is great. It has places for everything, right? There's this layered thing about putting the boards in. There's the perfect rows to stack the coins in. And then you have this big bag of tokens and nowhere to put it. There's no place for it in the insert. There's a place for everything except this one bag of tokens. I think the expectation is you would take out the insert every time, but underneath is the bag. I found I couldn't store the tokens in the bag under the insert, so I had to dump all the tokens out and then put the insert on top of that. And every time I take the insert out, take all the tokens, put them in a bag. I mean, at some point, I got frustrated with it. And this is the thing, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't mind throwing out an insert if it's a generic one. But if it's almost perfect and it has little places for literally everything except for one thing, then I try my best to make it work. It's a psychological thing, I suppose. And then when I can't make it work, in the end of like, I play this game enough, I can't justify taking out the insert every time, and so I did toss the insert in the end, and I recommend you do so too. I think this game is much better than I think it's 6.5 is what its rating is on Board Game Geek, and I like it much more than that. It did take me a play or two to get into it, and then once I did, and I could see kind of how to value things, and the players I played with also became more familiar, so we were all more familiar with the game. And that's when it kind of elevated into kind of another level. It's a simple game, but it's not one that lends itself to a good first play. So if you're looking for this game, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is because it's a Days of Wonder big box game, usually the prices never really go really, really low. Days of Wonder games were kind of expensive when they came out, and there are people who collect Days of Wonder games. I know because I was one of them. Not anymore, but I was. I got rid of most of them, kept this one. And Shadows over Camelot. And Small World. We'll talk about those another time. The good news is that more people are trading their copies away than are looking for them in trade. So it's a buyer's market, so to speak, in terms of trade. So you can probably get this in a trade relatively easily. It's a very interesting game, and it's one of those auction games that doesn't really feel like an auction game, or at least it turns the genre on its head a little bit. So it's a very unique game. It's very special, but it is a game that doesn't really lend itself to a positive first play experience. But if you are interested in it and you seek out your own copy, give it a couple plays. Give it a chance. The game may just grow on you. Thanks for watching. Remember, older games like Cargo Noir don't stop being good just because newer games come out. Take care.